Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Jesus Cartel. What's going on, Clay?
Man, it is all good. Excited about being here with you today. But what I'm really excited about is to hear about this Spartan race that you raced recently. I hadn't got to hear a lot about it and just hadn't really been together too much. So, hey, instead of just talking all about me, tell me how this race went.
Yeah, it was interesting. Interesting would be a really easy way to put it. It was extremely difficult. We ended up going about 35 miles. The terrain and elevation change was about 6 times more than what we were expecting based on the previous year's race. And so they had massively changed the elevation. Very, very rugged terrain, uphill, downhill, over and over. Big rocks, loose rocks, riverbanks. It was a lot. It was a lot in terms of just trying to move around. Even simple movements were very difficult, and it was a battle of will, you know. And you get like 17 or so miles in, and you're only halfway there, and you know by the time you get halfway, you're pretty well spent, you know, as far as your grip and your strength and stuff like that. And so the mental of knowing that you're going to have to go do everything that you just did a second time, it's a lot, because each mile after that is treacherous, really, on your body. My knee, which we expected to be a problem, was a problem, and it was a problem much earlier than I expected it to be. I was hoping I could get into the double-digit miles before it really started hurting. That's not what happened. Mile 3, it started hurting pretty good, and it was because of all of the very steep downhill. Just put so much extra pressure on it. You know, I'm used to running, and I'm running off of concrete. I'm running on terrain, but it's flat here, and there's not a lot of hills in Winsboro.
Right.
And so there's just no way to simulate that without driving to the Sicily Island Hills and running that every day, which I don't have the gas money to do. And so, it put a lot of pressure on my knee right away. And dealt with several little nagging injuries, got some really bad blisters on the bottom of my feet and stuff like that. It was a big challenge, and Joe and I were together for most of the race, and so that helped. For the time that we were able to run together, just to kind of help push each other and stuff like that. It helps to have somebody to talk to and keep your mind off of the intense suffering of it all. But man, it was good. It was a great experience, and we had some other people from our church go and do. Some of them just did the Beast, which is like a 13-mile race, and then some of them did 3 different races, and man, they killed it. They absolutely crushed it, and I was there to watch them finish 2 of their 3 races, and man, they rolled through it. I was very impressed with them, and some of them had some pretty good injuries too, and still put up some excellent times. A lot of people earned my respect this weekend, getting to do stuff like that, and so really, really neat experience. Really neat.
But tell me this, we talk about the 35 miles. The terrain and all that, but then there was a lot of obstacles.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit, tell us a couple of the obstacles.
Yeah, so most of the obstacles were geared towards challenging your grip and your upper back strength. And so think like monkey bars, rock climbing walls, stuff like that. And you would have had probably 7 or 8 obstacles that were geared towards those. And then there was a lot of carries. So I had to do half a mile with a 50-pound sandbag, half a mile with a 60-pound sandbag, and half a mile with an 80-pound bucket filled with gravel. Those are very mentally taxing. And also you're kind of going up, not straight uphill. The 60-pound actually had a straight uphill, but it's just kind of like a gradual uphill. And so, a lot of mental taxing. There's no way to really comfortably carry those things after so long. Not to mention, you're already a lot of miles in by the time you get there. That's not at the beginning. Right. And then you got to do it once on the front and then on the back as well. And so, that last carry I was probably 28, 29 miles in before they threw a 60-pound sandbag on me and told me to go uphill, and so it's really just the mental of it all. And then some of the other obstacles that you have, they're inverted walls. And so like think about if you were running up a wall that was sloped, think of it being sloped backwards. So this wall's facing down towards you. So you got to jump up and grab on kind of like a midway point of this obstacle, somehow get your feet up underneath you, and then go, basically upside down to get to the top of it and swing your leg over. The majority of it was about being able to get your legs high on obstacles like that. If you could get your legs high up and over and let your hamstrings help to curl your body weight up, they weren't so hard to do. They looked a lot harder than they were, those particular obstacles. But once you got to them on the second half, because you got to do everything twice, once you get to them on the second half and you don't have any grip strength left, now it's a lot harder to get that leg up. And so the things that seemed pretty simple on the front half weren't so simple on the back.
I understand. So 2 more questions. Number 1, are you glad that you did it?
Yes, I am. I don't want to say that I'm thrilled with my physical performance, just because, like I said, my grip and my upper back really, my legs held up great, compared to what I expected. My grip and my upper back didn't hold up as well as I thought they would. But mentally, I was very impressed with myself, because even in the midst of the worst points of it, I was just plugging along, whistling in my head and knowing that like I'm that much closer to being done, and it was all good. And so, yeah, definitely glad. I would not recommend it to a lot of people though.
Well, and then, so that leads into the last question is, could you see yourself doing it again?
Probably not, but it's not because of the fear of doing it, because I would only get better. The problem is that cardio driven exercise is not something that I feel a lot of usefulness for. There's a limit to how useful cardio is in my life, legitimately, because let's say there's an emergency. Well, how far am I ever going to have to really run in an emergency? Like a few miles maybe. And so that's really all I feel the need to prepare for. Strength, however, comes into play a lot more in my life. Like, man, I really needed to be stronger than I was in that situation. And the issue with fitness is, your body, it doesn't really understand what you're doing. It doesn't know you're lifting weights. It doesn't know you're running for cardio. Your body is just signals. It's sending signals to your brain, sending signals to your muscles. And a cardio signal and a strength signal very strongly combat each other, or a muscle building signal. Because if you're sending your body a cardio signal saying, hey, look, he just ran a long ways, he's probably going to have to do this again. The signal it sends to the rest of your body is, we need to get rid of all the weight we can. We don't need to add any, for sure. And so the more cardio you do, the harder it is to put muscle on. And so I find muscle to be much more useful to me than an ultra marathon type of cardio.
Right.
And so I don't think that I'll do it again, but I'll probably push myself in another area that I really have no business doing, but more on the strength side of things, I would imagine, next.
Well, we're glad that you're here, and glad that you're back, and glad that you made it and you finished and was able to accomplish something that you wanted to accomplish,
Yeah, absolutely. And in other news, the families that we've been working towards freeing, we just sent over to Pakistan just over $4,000, like $4,200. And we have already been pledged another $3,000.
Cool.
And so I got a phone call from somebody last night, which, man, it was so cool too. Somebody I'm connected to, and I know they wouldn't want me blasting their name about it, and so I'm not going to, out of respect for them. But man, it was a cool connection that I had made, that God had made, and he called and was like, "Hey, look, man, I'm wanting to shell some money towards this," and man, it's beautiful. It's just really cool to see the community come together for a purpose much bigger than ourselves. And man, I'm so thankful to be here and have the tribe that I have, because that's kind of the way that I see a people groups. The tribe is still a thing. That's right. It always is. You got family, but you really pick the people that you want to do life with. And I got a good tribe of people around me. One more shout out I want to give, and I don't know that any of these people listen to this podcast at all. They may or may not, but I was very impressed with the CrossFit Winsboro people.
Yeah.
They had several people that I had never really met or anything like that, but I was very impressed with them. They worked hard. They got after it out there, put up some really impressive times, and a variety of experience levels. So it wasn't just the ones that were extremely prepared. It was also some ones that this was new to them, and that was very impressive to me. And
well, speaking of tribes and stuff, that group right there, they're like a family unit and stuff.
Sure.
And I know several of them real well, and they care for each other and love each other. And somebody I was talking to that's part of that group says that it's important for them. They always run it together.
Yeah.
I saw them. They don't do it separately. It's not to them. It's not so much about time and everything. It's more about doing a group project and doing it together. And so I'm sure there's some of them that, hey, go out on their own and, try to better their times. But a lot of them, they just do it together and help each other. And so I thought that was pretty cool too.
Yeah. And I'm not a CrossFit guy myself. I've never done it. It's just not really the type of lifting that I'm into, but you got to give respect where it's due. And man, they absolutely killed it. And so, got a lot of respect for them and that group. And, whether you like what they're doing or don't, and I'm not saying I don't like it, it's just not what I do. You got to respect the strength, the cardio, the effort level, the focus, and the mental that it takes to do something like that. They did a fantastic job. Very impressed. Very
Good
impressed.
Deal, man. Well, we're glad that you're here and glad to be on this podcast today.
Yeah, absolutely. So get to know you segment question today that I haven't told you, and so this will be the first time that you're hearing it. But it is a question I'm kind of interested in because I think that I've got a pretty good idea of it, and I want to see if you surprise me. I want to know, what are the values that you look for when you pick your friends?
Yeah, so the first thing is, all right, so I'll minister to anybody. I'm ministering to a young man today that I've never met before.
Yeah.
He's his mom is a friend of a friend, and so I'll minister to anybody. But as far as friends go, the first thing is, man, they need to have the same revelation of Christ that I do. I'm around so many people all of the time that if I'm going to really have a friend, I need it to be beneficial on both sides. I need the baseline to be that they love Jesus as much as I do, that they understand how much Jesus loves them and stuff. And I'm not saying I can't help people out and this and that, but at the same time, for a true friendship, I need that to be a baseline. You got to remember, I've been walking this thing out for 27 years.
Yeah.
And I'm not a mile four and no more type guy. I want to bring everybody along with me. But if I'm going to develop a relationship with somebody and they're going to be a close friend, I don't need to have to wonder where they are spiritually or where their head's at and those kind of things. I need somebody that, hey, they already got that part. And so for me, the baseline is that they need to have a strong, intimate relationship with Jesus. I also like to hang out with people that have great marriages. I do a lot of marriage counseling and stuff, and I'm willing to help anybody with that. But as far as my friends and stuff go, because, I want them to have strong marriages and stuff, because most of the time I'm not going to just be friends with the guy. I'm going to be friends with the whole family. Well, if I'm going to be close to, another woman, I want to know that she's got a great marriage.
Yeah.
Or I'm not going to be close to her. So for me, a guy that's you got a great marriage, raising the kids well, doing those things, those are other things that I'm looking for too.
Yeah.
Just because, like I said, we do ministry all the time and we're willing to help anybody. But on that friend level, I want them to have those baselines.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's good. And I think that that's more what I expected, to hear. And,
I don't care if they're really into football or they're really into this or really into that. None of that really matters to me. I can get along with anybody on any level,
Sure.
I like people that enjoy eating good food. We could go out and eat good food and cook good together. And I enjoy people that like to watch sports. And, no matter what team I don't really care what team they cheer for as long as they're passionate about it. I enjoy those kind of things. But that's not a deal breaker for me.
Yeah.
The deal breaker is, intimate relationship with God and a good marriage and good family.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I was watching a video yesterday, and it was a clip from Tombstone, and it was somebody giving some commentary about it, because Doc Holliday in the movie Tombstone is just kind of going wild doing all this stuff, and one of the guys in the movie, he says, "Why are you doing this, Doc?" He says, "Because Wyatt Earp is my friend." Mm-hmm. And he goes, "Hell, Doc, I got lots of friends." He goes, "I don't."
I agree.
And the guy who was doing the commentary, he was saying, anybody who really has friends knows they only have a few. And if you think you got a bunch of them, you probably don't have any.
Right.
And so, you're very selective about who your friends are. I got tons of acquaintances, tons of people I like and spend time around that really aren't my friends. It doesn't mean I don't like you. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about having that intimate relationship of friendship. Scripture says a friend sticks closer than a brother. That is intimacy. Yeah. And so, when I'm talking about friendship, I'm talking about a level of intimacy with another person that is unrivaled, even by family at times. And, that there's a few mentalities. Mentalities are everything to me. How do you view life? How do you view situations? First, the people that I'm friends with, they have a get after it mentality. You know what I mean? Like if we wake up the next morning and we're like, "Hey, look, man, we're going to go fishing, but we got to move this pile of rocks." You will never see a pile of rocks get moved faster than my friends will do it. Right. That's just the way that they are. It's the way that they're wired. And we'll compete with each other and laugh the whole time we're doing it. It'll be a competition, but it's going to be work, and everybody's okay with that. I love that. You also have to be teachable. Nobody in my friend group thinks that they've got it all figured out. And if they do, they'll feel themselves start to get shoved out of the group by the other people. But we all kind of lean into the next quality that I look for, which is accountability. And within my friend group, there's so much of that if a person acts like they've got it all figured out, the accountability from the rest of the group is going to really start to hit them pretty hard. Mm. But yeah, you got to remain teachable. You need to be dependable. If you say you're going to be somewhere, there's an expectation that you're going to be somewhere. That's me through and through. If I say I'm going to show up somewhere, I'm going to show up somewhere. If a better offer comes along later, it doesn't matter. I'm going where I said I was going. That's just the way that it is. Loyalty, but not the kind of loyalty that you see in a lot of friend groups where they just expect you to blindly be okay with everything that they do. That to me is not loyalty. Loyalty to me is just having the integrity to speak well of people when they're not around, and to protect what you know about people when they're not there to protect themselves. I find that to be very valuable, but also very rare in people, because like if somebody says something negative about you to me when you're not there, you'll be defended, because of what I believe about your character. I'm not just going to go, yeah, it's whatever. Like, I don't think that is present in real friendships. I also like people who are up for anything. That's a big thing within my friend group. Everybody's pretty willing to do whatever. If I'm like, "Hey, look, I bought some cricket paddles. We're going to learn cricket." All my people are going to be like, "Yeah, let's do it." And so that's a big thing that I look for in people too. Strangely enough, religion or Christianity is not a prerequisite to be a part of my group. I think just because that's been such a tool of ministry for me over the years, which is you bring a person into this intimate, tight circle that is exclusively Christian, but hasn't always been. It becomes exclusively Christian because we introduce one non-Christian at a time, and now they're surrounded by strong Christian influence with all of these values that we're talking about, and they now see something that they don't fully have in themselves. They want to know how to get it, and that's a lot of times what creates the conversion experience over time, is just repeated values through this many people that they've not ever experienced in a church or anything like that. And so, yeah, it's never really been a prerequisite for me, but it's for that reason. It's because if I'm bringing you into my circle, I believe the conversion will happen. I'm positive of it. As a matter of fact, you're not going to stick around if, otherwise. And so, yeah, that's kind of the values I look for in people.
Yeah, man, it's, and when I first come to Christ and walking this thing out, it was a lot more inclusion like that. As far as, hey, if you want to do what we're doing, come on, you know. But as I started seeing failed marriages, and as I started having children, and as I started seeing that the people that I'm around had influence on my kids and different things like that, I started wanting to be more around the ones that were moving ahead.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to bring everybody in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So I'm, and I feel good about it because most of my time I'm ministering to everybody. But as far as that intimate deal, I want to have a friend that can call me out, and someone that hasn't been around long enough or doesn't have that same level or whatever can't call me out.
Yeah.
I don't even want anybody praying for me that doesn't have the same revelation of Christ that I do.
Yeah.
And if you can't pray for me and you can't speak into my family and you can't help lead my kids and you can't do those things, then to me, that's ministry. But we're talking about friendship.
Yeah.
We're talking about an intimate circle here. So anyhow, it's, hey, I love it. And we love people and want to help people all the time.
Absolutely. Well, last week we had an interesting podcast. We talked about temptation and some depths that we hadn't talked about previously. And viewer question of the week this week, I wanted to kind of navigate through something we've talked about a couple of times before, also from a little bit different angle than maybe we normally talk about it. A comment or a statement that you and I allude to a lot, or at least I know that I use this wording a lot, is that circumstances are not your God. God is your God. And so your circumstances don't determine the type of day you have. God does. So you can have a good day in the midst of some really terrible circumstance. Having said that, we do inevitably experience terrible circumstances from time to time. And so my question for you is, perhaps it doesn't make your day bad. Maybe you can still have a good day, but how do you handle it when you're experiencing or walking through what is clearly a terrible circumstance?
Yeah, so we get asked forms of this question a good bit.
Yep.
And I know why. I don't think anybody's trying to trip us up. I think they're just trying to, in their words, make us feel a little more human or seem a little more human to them. And so I understand that. But the first thing that we have to realize is what we can't let happen is we can't let a bad 5 minutes make us have a bad day.
Yeah.
That's what we can't do. So many people are like, well, I had a bad day. And really, they just had one bad thing happen that in itself can be dwelled on and all that. And we can focus on that. And we can not only have a bad day, we can have bad weeks if we want to based on that event, if we want to. But we don't have to. Now, with that being said, there is things that are really difficult in this world, so you got to make sure that we're not, to coin my pastor, we have to make sure that we're not making mountains out of molehills. Yeah. But there are mountains and there are major difficulties that we have to go through in this life. In this life we have seen wars and rumors of wars. We've seen death. We've seen death too early. We've seen divorce. We've seen disease. We've seen things, and these things can be difficult. And it's not like you can just close your eyes and, pretend that they're not there. But at the same time, number one, you have to see them for what they are, and then you have to see God for who He is. And that's the biggest deal. Is it doesn't mean that we are emotionless. It doesn't mean that we don't have emotions. We're just not driven by those emotions. It doesn't mean that we don't deal with stuff. We deal with stuff all the time. It doesn't mean that we act like it's not there. No, we don't run from our problems because that just makes it worse. But we don't make them bigger than they are. And we don't let the problem defeat the God in us.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest deal. So, what happens, when we deal with the circumstances, what happens when we have bad days and bad moments and stuff, man, I'm still the same man that I was before. God is still the same God that he was before. We have to keep that in perspective. In my line of work and what I deal with, there is a lot of heartache. There's a lot of, hey, you pour into somebody and then they don't handle things the way they should, or they, don't put forth the effort that they should, or they don't want to try as hard as you want them to try, or, whatever. Sometimes I teach and preach better than they listen. Just being honest with you, and so those things could really bother me. But if I allow that to continue to bother me, then I wouldn't preach and teach and disciple again. So I had to realize that my job is to do what God's called me to do. Their job is to do what God's called them to do.
Yeah.
And I had to realize that. So I just try real hard to be obedient to what God has for me and keep him the center of my focus.
Yeah. I think that the scope of perspective is such an important thing to open up anytime you get bad news or end up in the middle of a circumstance you'd rather not be in. Because the reality is that the majority of your circumstances that are negative are really only affecting a handful of your relationships at most, sometimes as little as one relationship. And so, if you look at it from a strictly statistical perspective, which is hard to do in the middle of trouble, less than 97%, about 97% of your relationships are completely unaffected by whatever happened. Yet you're allowing it to overtake 100% of you. And so while it's really hard to kind of flip that switch in that moment, I think that it's an important thing to do is to recognize that, like, you have a responsibility to some other things still, even though this is very difficult. You still have a responsibility to some other things. And if you allow this to take over 100% of you, you're going to lose that other 97% that's currently preserved. And so that's a big deal for me is having that scope of perspective to understand that I've lost this much in this situation. And if I handle this correctly, it can stop here. If I don't handle this correctly, this will snowball, and we'll see how far I let it go.
Right.
And so that's one of the big things for me is to change my perspective on trying to preserve what remains and not focusing so much on what I just lost. Because the other thing is when you lose something, there's not any getting it back. And that's unfortunate. It is. And I hate it. It's terrible. But it is nonetheless the reality. Once something is gone, it is gone. And so you can't put all your effort into trying to somehow lasso this back into reality. You've got people who, one, if there are other people who are affected by it, they're going to need you in this situation. Two, all of the things that are unaffected by this situation, I'm going to just say this in a totally unsensitive manner, just not on purpose. It just kind of sounds the way it sounds. They don't care what's going on with you, the things that are unaffected. Like, if you don't show up to work, nobody cares, that you're sad that your dog got ran over. It's a terrible thing. I'm not saying it's fun, but it is a reality, is that there's only so much grace that the world extends you in these type of situations. And if you can't keep it together, you'll find yourself in a much worse situation than you have to be in. And I've witnessed that several times throughout my life with, family and friends that gave themselves over to a catastrophe and ended up losing way more when it was all said and done than they ever had to lose. Just because they couldn't pull themselves out of those places. And so, but I do want to say, just for clarity, and you clarified it a little bit, this is in no way to say that I'm unaffected by these things,
Right.
They're terrible, and I hate the way that they feel. And man, it makes me sick to my stomach to experience some of the things that we've experienced, and unfortunately probably will continue to experience. It's not easy. It's not easy.
No. In this world, you will have trouble, but take heart, because I've overcome the world. We've dealt with some things in life, and let's just lighten it up a little bit. Let's just talk about. We got an example. I'm in a political race right now. We're in a runoff. Me and another guy, he led by a pretty good margin. In the first race. Now, it's a race to see who can get all their people to come, And so let's say that hey, I lose this election, okay? And so I lose this election, and I'm no longer a police juryman for Richland Parish. Well, the truth of the matter is District 7 will still have a voice. Mm. They'll still have representation. The taxes will still get paid. The money will still be there to fix roads and drainage and stuff. I might not be the one that gets to decide what roads and what drainage and stuff, but there is a man that the people voted on that would be able to do that, and he would be their representation. They voted for him. So it's not like the whole world's falling apart. Sure. A percentage of my income would be missing, because I do receive income from that. But I didn't have that income 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And we didn't add any bills, so I wouldn't have as much extra money, if any extra money, but we didn't have that before. Okay. Now I don't have this title anymore, but I was a great guy without that title. That title didn't define me. Nobody looks at me as the police juryman. Yeah. They look at me as Clay Russell, an established business guy that loves people, that's also serving on the police jury. So I've never let it define me. It's one of my 10 roles in life, or however many roles it is in life. It's not a defined role. So, it's kind of like you were saying, it doesn't affect nearly as much of you as what you think it does. And so you have to look at it from perspective. And, can I still win Husband of the Year even though I'm not on the police jury in Richland Parish? Well, sure I can. Can I win Husband of the Year when my dad died, when I was in India preaching the gospel? Well, sure I can. Can I win Husband of the Year when this person decided that they didn't want to be part of our group anymore? Well, sure I can, and but I can't focus on those things. I got to focus on what God's got for us, what's happening, because like you said, if we take our focus off of that, then we can let that 3% or that 1% or whatever drive us and affect that 97%.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're so sad that you stop showing up to work, you'll lose that job too.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then I don't want to speak necessarily to your relationship, but what we see a lot of times is we see somebody give themselves over to the situation. They end up losing their job. Now there's instability in the home. When there's instability in the home, and there already wasn't a great relationship between, the husband and wife, now there's even more of that. And then, it can lead down a slippery slope of things that you never expected to happen. And I've watched it happen over and over and over again. And it's unfortunate, but it usually comes from people allowing a circumstance to overtake them. And you made the comment when we first kind of started talking about this, that things like this get asked a lot. And you said, why? And I do too, but it's a different reason than you said. And though yours was correct, it's also because people know things are getting closer and closer to our home. And they want to know, is this circumstance, and you know what I mean? Is this enough for them to change the way that they're whistling? And it's not. And
the answer is it's not.
Yeah. And it doesn't make it good, fun, or okay. But the gospel is consistent throughout. I mean, it is the same in the Old Testament as it is in the New, and we see the picture of God very clearly. And he has a call, and we see Jesus suffer through circumstances. We see him lose people he cared about. We see Jesus weep. You know, we see him moved when John was killed. You know, we see these things, yet he remained who he was. He continued to operate the way that he was operating before. He didn't give himself over to the circumstances. And I think that is something that he didn't do to say, hey, look, man, I'm Jesus, you're not Jesus, so you're not going to be able to do this. This is one of those things he left to us as an example. You know, take a moment, step away, and then get back after it, you know, because that's what he did. He would withdraw, and then he'd get back after it. You know, he'd take a moment, and then he'd lean in, you know. And so that's what I did. That's what I do.
Hey, and that's what we have to, that's a good practice, you know. I mean, Jesus is our example, and when things would get kind of hairy or kind of crazy, he would leave out through the crowd. He would go get by himself. He would pray to God, his Father, and he would get a refilling of the Holy Spirit, and then he'd go back out there, you know. And that's what we do, you know. We just can't, you know, the world would justify you straight to hell. Yeah. You know, they'll say, well, yeah, man, that Clay, man, he had to deal with this, and he had to deal with that, and he had to do it. You know, people call him about this, and they call him about that, and the weight of the world on him, and so many people depending on him, and all this kind of stuff. Man, I understand why he started doing this or doing that or whatever. Man, if I had the weight of that many people on me, I would do that too. You know, I mean, the people would justify you straight to hell. But it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be that way. Hey, we're going to stand for what God has done in our life. We're going to stand for who God is and who we are in him. And, hey, man, in this world, we're going to have trouble. And I just think that people want other people to feel sorry for them, and then they want other people to feel bad too, and then you get this whole posse of people that are just negative and all that. And I've said this before on this podcast, I'm just not a good negative person. I'm just not your guy for that. I mean, it doesn't mean that we don't deal with real stuff, man. We deal with real stuff. I deal with real stuff every day. Andrew deals with real stuff every day. You want to come deal with some real stuff? Come with us.
Yeah.
You know, deal with who we deal with. Minister to who we minister to. Go run 35 miles, you know, in this unforgiving terrain. You know what I'm saying? Whatever. But, I mean, don't think that just because we deal with stuff that we got to be depressed and full of anxiety and all that. I ain't living like that.
Yeah.
That's just not going to be us. Hey, we're going to deal with stuff. I'll slap the devil right upside the head, but we're going to move forward. You know, we're going to continue to do what God's called us to do.
Yeah.
And, man, that is to serve him.
Yep. And you know, to kind of twist an old saying a little bit and reapply it, everybody wants to feel how I feel. I'm happy, man. I'm just filled with joy all the time. People know it. I walk in a room, I'm laughing, I'm smiling, I'm joking. I have relationships with people where I can pick on them, and no one else in the world can pick on that guy or that girl. They get so offended and so hurt when anybody else messes with them. But when I do it, man, they just laugh and giggle, and we have such a great time. Everybody in the world wants to be how I am, but they're not willing to make the decisions and draw the lines in the sand that I've made and that I've drawn. And these are the things that we talk about on this podcast. Oh, yeah. This is where you and I draw lines. This is where you and I make firm decisions, and all of these firm decisions allow us to be the people that we are. If you want to be happy all the time, like I am, there's just some decisions that you have to make, and they're hard to make. But if you want that, those things, that's the cost. That you got to pay the ferryman to get across, and sometimes those costs are not getting to sit in pity and have people feel sorry for you, because that's something that we joke about so much with our young, like my generation of people, and the younger generations is like, man, do they like attention. And they don't care how they get it. You know what I mean? If there's a war in Israel right now, post a picture of the Israeli flag in the background of your room, and you with your head down holding a Bible, man, you'll get hundreds of likes and comments. You know what I mean? It's like, but that's you can't live like that and be happy like I am.
Right.
You can't seek attention through pity and be happy like I am. There was a TV show one time. Somebody sent me a clip of it. This particular scene where it was a show about vampires, and that it was like a spoof comedy kind of show, and there was a type of vampire called an energy vampire, and it was this lady who fed on people's sympathy and pity. And so they were poking at something that we see all the time on social media, and she was just crying, talking about how her cat died and everybody's feeling so sorry for her, and she's starting to you could see her like smirking and smiling, and everybody else was like falling out because she was stealing their energy from all the pity. And it's like, there's no reality there. You're not getting anything from people pitying you or feeling sorry for you. The only thing you're doing is handicapping yourself in the situation. You've got to free yourself from those needs, because they're not real needs. They're a facade of something else. There's something missing on the inside of you that you're trying to fill with pity. And I can't tell you. I wish I could tell. I say I couldn't. If you and I talked one-on-one, I could tell you exactly what it is. But through the camera, I can't tell each and every person exactly what that issue is. But I'm telling you, there is one if you're feeling the need to stuff it with pity. And you got to let go of whatever that is.
Yeah, man, you can't be fueled by any of those kind of things, because that's all attacks of the enemy, We call it fear and all of his cousins, anxiety and depression and self-pity and those kind of things. And, and a lot of these things that we're talking about, things that are tough in life, and it's not the things that you deal with, it's how you handle those things.
Yeah.
But, my best buddy, Jeff Boughton, he always says all the time that, man, when you're dealing with marriages and you're dealing with families and you're dealing with people and stuff, it almost always comes back to somebody's just being so dang selfish.
Yeah.
And that's just the way he said, hey, just dang selfish, and it's true, I mean, even like the pity deal, is somebody being selfish, and we just got to quit being so selfish, and that's the root of a lot of it. And then you was talking about how, there's things that you can say to people, and they just take it totally different than they would from somebody else. People always told me that while I've been walking this thing out with Christ, they always just said, man, you can say things that nobody else can and get away with it.
Yep.
And, I knew it was true, but I didn't know why it was true. And then later on in life, I learned why it was true. And the reason it's true is because I took the time to develop relationships with those people. And so because I did, they understood me and I understood them, and they knew that what I was saying was out of love. And I didn't have to have a whole conversation. Yeah. I could just walk up and look at them funny or look at them different or whatever. And it's because of that relationship, and you have those same things. And that's the reason why we're able to speak into somebody's life and they understand it better than if somebody else did. Yeah. I told, a lady that I'm real close with the other day, I said, hey, I said something to her, and I said, hey, I hope I didn't offend you like that. She goes, I know you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I know exactly what you meant, mm-hmm. and so we don't always have to say the right thing or look the right way or whatever, because we have those relationships. Well, people need that. You need that in life. You don't have to explain everything to everybody like it's the first time. But if you want, like Andrew says, if you want the life that we have, if you want that, it takes work.
Sure.
Jeff, I also tell you that I worked really hard to be his friend.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is a guy that's 10 years older than I am. You know, this is a guy that you know, was a major farmer and stuff, and I'd never even been around a farmer before. You know, I mean, this guy took me hunting for the first time that I'd been deer hunting at 28, 29 years old. You know, I mean, to call me green, I was as green as there was to his life. You know, now I had been to the big cities and I'd made the big money and, you know, had all these different experiences and stuff that was different, you know, and I could teach him a lot in that area. But as far as us having things in common, we didn't. But you know what? I invited him over to supper. Every time I could, I tried to be around him. He even had me driving a tractor one time, raking hay. He asked me, I said, look, man, is there anything I can do to help out? He's like, do you know how to rake hay? And I was like, sure. You know, I used to rake the dirt on the ball fields and stuff. And I'm imagining getting out there with a rake and raking hay. I mean, manual labor. I can do manual labor. You know, you don't have to be real smart. You just have to do it. You know, next thing I know, I'm driving a tractor with a rake on the back of it, and I'm operating a tractor. You know, never been on a tractor, much less operated a tractor. But, you know, that's what it took to, you know, to be his friend and to learn. And now, you know, we just call each other, text each other, whatever. We don't have to do any of that. But you got to spend some time developing relationships. You got to put the work in. You're not just all of a sudden going to be okay when bad things happen. You got to continue to develop your relationship with God and know who you are and be confident in those things. These things that we're talking about don't just happen, but they can be this way for anybody who will put it in and desires for it to happen.
Yeah. That sounded like something I would do, man. Go learn to work a tractor. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so, no, that's good stuff. You know, the reality is you also got to be honest with yourself, because a lot of people say things like, oh man, I don't want to feel this way. I want to be happy, but they don't, because there's something about that pity and that attention or something that fills a void. And it only very temporarily, by the way, which is why you feel the need for it again so quickly afterwards. I don't have that void. I feel great at all times, and that's legitimate. And but you got to be honest with yourself. It's just like I have so many people come up to me because I've been, you know, training my whole life, and I know a ton about nutrition, a ton about lifting weights, losing weight, gaining weight, whatever you want to do with your weight, I can get you to do it. I have so many people in my life say, man, I really want to lose weight. And I'll tell them how to do it. Real simple, not anything extreme, real simple stuff. And they will not do it. Why? Is it because it was too hard? No, it wasn't. It's because they don't really want to lose weight. They're just trying to make conversation. They know that this is probably something they should do, and they want to talk about it, but they're not really interested in losing weight. If they were, all they'd have to do is those very simple things I suggested to them, but it's not what they're doing. Why? Because they're not being honest with themselves. And so when it comes to this whole like pity thing and wanting to do better in tough circumstances, stuff like that, you got to actually want to. You know, there's some things you can do. There's some lines you can draw. There's some decisions you can make ahead of time. And if you'll make those, and they are hard to do, but you can do it. And then you can get those results. But you got to be honest with yourself. And if you don't want to, then don't pretend like you want to. You know what I mean? It's not helping you. It's not helping anybody. I know 2 siblings, same parents, grew up in the same household. Their parents abandoned them. Right? One of the siblings is extremely successful today. The other one is a total failure. And both of them say it's because their parents left. One claims his success is because his parents abandoned him. The other claims his failure is because his parents abandoned him.
Yep.
They're like a year apart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're talking nearly identical circumstance. But one chose to see it as an opportunity. The other one chose to see it as a handicap. And they both got exactly what they were looking for.
Yep.
You know? And so.
Hey, I see it. I use another example. I say that children of parents that smoke cigarettes have to choose if they're going to smoke cigarettes or not.
Sure.
They either choose to smoke because their parents smoke, or they choose not to smoke because their parents smoke and they didn't want to do it. And it's about 50-50, you know. But a child whose parents don't smoke don't have to make that choice.
Yeah.
We just don't smoke.
Yeah.
Because we don't smoke.
Yeah.
But a child of a smoker has to make a decision. You know, they're either going to do it like their parents or they're not going to do it because of their parents. But a non-smoker child we just don't smoke.
Yeah.
Same thing. So, what happens when you have bad days? Man, work real hard to limit your bad days. Yeah. But when you do have bad moments, when you do have bad days, when you do have things that are difficult, man, keep it in perspective. Don't let it get bigger than it really is. And don't forget who God is and who you are in Christ.
Yeah. Don't let it drag out, because it's going to want to hang on as long as if it can't get bigger, it's going to want to stay longer. Don't let it stay longer either. So, man, I feel good about it. You good?
Yeah, man, we did good. We did good today, and we were able to get back on track and with our schedule and everything. So, hey, I hope y'all are enjoying the podcast. And if you are, don't keep it for yourself, man. Tell other people about it. Tell other people about the Jesus Cartel and what God's doing here. And if we can help you in any way, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Love you guys. Be good.